I'm going to go ahead and kick us off because we've got plenty of people who are here with us today, and we're excited to get started and talk about how you can create a culture that people won't want to leave. My name is Rachel Merritt. I've been on the WildSpark team for a little over a year, and I will say that I'm excited about this topic because the WildSpark culture is a phenomenal one, and it's one that's made a huge impact not only on my work life but on my personal life too. We have a culture here where the two are not separated, but really you're able to bring your whole authentic self to work. One of our core values is integrity, and so we try to live out of our whole heart and our whole selves. And so I'm so pumped to have these guys with me so we can talk to you about building great culture. So first and foremost, I've got Josh Swing, who here at WildSpark we call our team captain. He's got the captain's armband sitting in his office. But Josh, I am curious, how has a positive work culture impacted you?
Flex on him, Swing.
It's a great question, Rachel. I was actually talking about this with my wife the other night. She asked me the question because I've been here at WildSpark now for almost 6 years. And she said, do you think you'd be the same person if you worked somewhere else, like somewhere not WildSpark? And my response immediately was probably not. I would like to still think that I would be a person of integrity and to be somebody who valued and cared for others, but there is no chance that I would have grown as much as I have here over the past 5 years as I have as anywhere else. And so we're going to get into that here in a second when we're talking about culture. And I know that I'm excited to hear your answer to this question, TJ, but then some of it is just personally and the relationships of the people that I get to work alongside of. We've joked and said Hampton's on our Mount Rushmore, but in all seriousness, he's made a huge impact on my life because of the way that I see him live his life. And Rachel's made a huge impact on my life by getting to see the way that she parents her children and crushes marketing at the same time and all these other things. So the phrase "you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with" comes to mind as I'm thinking about culture and how it impacts me. So I definitely think that I've been elevated as a result of the people that have been around me. That's my long-winded answer. Sorry for getting on my soapbox. I will step down now. And I'm excited to hear what DJ has to say about it.
Yeah, anytime Josh Swing gets on a soapbox, it's going to be good. You'll probably cry. So no need to apologize. But also with us today, we have Tyler Johnson, better known as TJ, from our friends at Nectar. He works in customer and product marketing over there. He's been with that team since January. And so, TJ, we are so excited you're here. If I had to kind of ask that same question to you, how has a positive work culture impacted you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. And first of all, resounding amen to Josh Swing for sure. That was amazing, and I couldn't agree more with everything you said. But for me, giving a more unique answer, let's say, I would say positive work culture has impacted me in the sense of like, I don't know, a big part of culture, in my opinion, is like Josh said, the values of the company and the mission of the company and all driving toward that mission. I don't know how many of you have read Boys on the Boat, one of my all-time favorite books. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. But that's all about rowing in the same direction, right? We all have the same mission where we all share the same values and we're trying to live out those values. And so it's almost like no matter what you're doing, no matter where you work, if you are all aligned around the same vision, the same mission, those same core values, you're all striving your best to live those. That just helps me. Like an important thing to me is feeling fulfilled by the work I do. Not just doing it because it's a job or a paycheck, but feeling fulfilled by that. And what helps me feel fulfilled is knowing what that mission is and resonating with it. Like, I want to make an impact on the world. Like, for example, Nectar's mission is helping people feel more valued and appreciated at work. I absolutely resonate with that mission. And so when we're all here at Nectar, all 40 of us or so, are all rowing in that same direction to help make an impact and help more people feel valued and appreciated at work, like there's nothing that makes me just want to get up in the morning, and it gets my drive time, like my thinking about in my drive time, my shower time, like my free time is spent thinking, how can I make more of an impact on that? So in that sense, it gets my best work. It gets the best out of me. And like Josh said, helps me to experience maximal growth for myself, because I am aligned with everybody and we're all, like I said, rowing in that same direction. So
I love it. If you were wondering why we had these two guys on to talk about culture, now you know. So I'm really fired up. It's going to be a great discussion today. And I'm ready to jump right in. First of all, I got some great feedback from Emily. The ultimate goal, when life is better because of work. Love to hear it. Yes, amen. That is the goal. That's a shared goal of both of our organizations. And so love to hear that from both of you guys. So first question, for anybody who needs to sort of understand this and for us to lay a foundation, how do you define workplace culture?
TJ, I'll let you take a stab at this one first.
Sweet. I like it. So the way that I would define workplace culture is, obviously you can't, and you definitely shouldn't try to control every single thing about your culture. That's just a authoritarian way to run your company, and that's not good, right? You're not going to get the best out of people when you're just forcing them to do it. But I would say, like, the way that I would define it is essentially the end result of putting those values in place, putting that mission in place, and striving every single day to live that, like truly live that out. And what is the end result of doing that every single day? And that involves every single person from top to bottom. Every single person is striving to do that. And by doing that, the result is your culture. It's not ping pong. It's not like fun games and stuff in the office. It truly is like, how do people feel about the work that they're doing, and how fulfilled are they? Are you getting the best work? I would say something along those lines of kind of that end result of striving to live those values and that mission that you've put in place.
I love the definition from TJ that you just popped up on the screen, Rachel. TJ, I don't know that I have anything to add there, but just doubling down on a lot of what you said. I think it starts with the culture that you say that you want to have through the values that you put in place, but then it's also how those are lived out, which you articulated really well. In the simplest form that I could communicate it would be that what do people hear? What do people see? And what do people experience on an everyday basis when they show up to work? And so I talked to a CEO recently who had this incredible vision, mission, and value statement for the organization, but had received some feedback recently from his frontline team members. And he said, hey, what you all are saying up at the top isn't what people experience down here on the bottom. And so there is this disconnect. And so I think it's the combination of both of those things, Tyler. It's making sure that you're communicating the culture that you want to see happen, but it's also how it's lived out. How do people buy into that? Or is everybody rowing in the same direction? What you mentioned earlier. So I'd say it's a combination. This is a great question, though.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like you'll find what your true culture is with what I like to call the water cooler talk. Like when people aren't around and it's just like we're just in the kitchen or we're just like hanging and mingling, what's the conversation like? Like, is there positive talk about the company? Is there positive talk about, man, or is it like negative? Like, man, we have these core values up on our wall. They're written there, but man, I don't see those being lived at all. It's like, that's your true culture then. Like that's where you'll find it. And so like you said, Josh, it's not just having it written on a wall. It's living it every single day, making decisions that may even have a negative financial impact, but because that is your core value, like you make those decisions and you stick to it. And so everybody knows you're consistent, that's your true culture.
That's good stuff, guys. Yeah. I mean, in our company history, if you asked our CEO, Cord Sachs, to tell you how WildSpark started, he would say at some point people started coming to him and saying, we hear you're the culture guy. can you help us transform our culture? And so, we get these questions all the time, and I feel like you guys really knocked it out of the park. It really is. There are so many different layers of culture, but at the end of the day, like, it's what you experience and live out every single day when you go to work. So next question. Oh, really quick. His favorite quote, and a quote we hear around here often, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You'll always hear Cord say that anytime we talk about culture. We love that one. And then our very own Hampton Dorch, who we've just loved on so much because we miss him from our normal Wild Spark webinar. But he says all the time, culture is more than ping pong tables and happy hour. So, TJ, just like you said, it's true. Next question we get, though, is why is culture important? Why should people care about this, especially senior leaders, mid-level leaders? Why is culture important?
I'll hop in here. I'll take the first swing at this one. Knowing that we're going to be talking about culture today, I actually did a little bit of research on some statistics around engagement and what it looks like in our world today. So I pulled from two sources, Gallup and Deloitte, which are two very credible sources when it comes to some of the surveys and research that they do. But in the most recent survey for 2022, found that 86%, which just think about that number, that's an extremely high number. 86% of employees do not feel engaged in their workplace, which to me, I read that and it just immediately made me really sad. I just got really sad thinking about where people will spend most of their lives, the 80,000 hour rules. You look at your life played out and you spend the majority of your life working more than you do with family, with your significant other or children or any of these other stuff that's really important. You actually spend more time at work. And the fact that an overwhelming majority of people feel disengaged from their workplace is really, really sad. Now, 18% of those you would label as actively disengaged. And the way that Gallup would define that is these are the people you're hearing about it from. They're complaining, they're looking at leaving, or they have already left your organization because of the lack of engagement, which leads a staggering number left in that percentage of people who are not actively disengaged. These people would be labeled as the quiet quitters. There's this quiet quitter epidemic that's happening in our world today. It's a buzzword right now. I really didn't know what it meant. I'm a little naive when it comes to stuff like we've talked about. All three of us have talked about. We live in this dream world because of the companies that we get to work for and the culture that we do have. That sometimes I'm just naive to some of the stuff that exists out there in the world. But quiet quitting would be the definition of that would be people show up to work, but they don't actually care about the work. They are doing the bare minimum to get by, to clock in and then clock out and move on with their life. And you're just not getting very much out of those people. It is actually tanking your productivity as an organization. The other statistic that I have here is companies with engaged employees, so the cultures that we're talking about today, versus disengaged employees, the statistics that I'm talking about here are 202% more productive from an organizational perspective just because of the engagement that exists. And so as I was looking at some of these statistics, I just thought, man, this describes really clearly why culture is so important. If your culture is toxic, you better believe that there is going to be 86%, if not more, of your employee base that is disengaged from the work. Versus the flip side of that, if your culture is healthy and thriving, you could expect the reverse to be true, where upwards of 86% of people feel engaged in their work and you're getting the most out of them and they're growing in every aspect of your life because of that care that TJ, you talked about earlier. But these would just be some quick statistics that I put together just to help illuminate why culture is important. Would love to hear, TJ, anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing real data to show this matters, guys. And it's really it's lacking. Like there's a big lack of a focus on this. And so I love that we're doing this webinar to put more, highlight these kinds of things, because it really is so important. If the end goal of your mission is to truly live your mission, right? Like every company should have a mission, and be striving towards something, some type of vision, right? If the end goal is to live that mission, then culture is, are people engaged in actually trying to get there, right? Like I said earlier, are you all rowing in the same direction? If you're not, guess what? You're simply not going to reach your destination, which is your mission.
Mm.
You need to have employees that are engaged. And it's not just, I feel like there's maybe I don't want to frame this as like a get the most out of your, like squeeze the most productivity out of your employees. It's not necessarily about that. Like culture is not about squeezing every last bit out of your employees. It's about helping them to feel like they want to give their best every single day. They want to contribute as much as they can and add value every single day, and striving toward reaching that, achieving that mission, let's say. And so culture is so important, because that will tell you if people are engaged in actually trying to reach that mission. That's kind of what I would say is really the end goal of a company is to reach that mission. Your culture is going to tell you if you're going to reach there or not.
Yeah, amen. No, those both of what you shared is so impactful. And I mean, if you're on this webinar today, it's already probably something that you care about, and that your ears have perked up and said, you've raised your hand and said, hey, I'm going to be here to listen and learn about this. But just to add to what you guys said, like I've worked at several different places over my career, and like culture pours over into whatever your product or your service or your customer base is. That is also really important. I've seen leaders act like it doesn't matter, but those things come out in sales pitches and in sales meetings. They show in your customer service and how you engage your users and those types of things. Like, so if you are somebody who thinks culture is something to put on the back burner before productivity or before whatever offerings or customer service that you give to the public and to the world, like you don't realize just how much your culture actually seeps through to that stuff. And one thing I love about our team here at WildSpark is like, we have these little sayings that somebody might be like, oh, that's cliche, or, oh, you guys say that all the time. Like we'd say surprise and delight, or, but like, then I see our team go out and do that with our customers. I see our team go out and do that kind of relational over transactional service, like with the people we talk to. So culture is important for all the things that you guys shared and the data and points, absolutely. And it's also important because it pours over into every aspect of your company, especially how you interface with the public. And so it's huge. Next question we get a lot. This is a really good one, because I think this is a really common question. And a lot of times people can throw their hands up and be like, I don't know if that's my problem. Who at an organization is responsible for workplace culture?
Cool. Josh, are you cool if I take this one first, let's say?
Go for it.
Awesome. Who is responsible for workplace culture? Every single person at the company. 100%. Every single person at the company is responsible for the workplace culture in striving to live those values, right? Caveat. It's almost like the leaders, if they're giving, writing these values and these things on the wall, but then they're not living it themselves, that's a big problem, right? You can't expect everybody to live these values and create this culture and then you not live it yourself, right? So like those leaders in the company that everybody looks up to, like they're very much responsible for not just providing the company with core values and mission statements and things like that. Absolutely, they are responsible for living that out as well as everybody else, right? Like it really does come down to everyone, but that like caveat of like, it's so important. I see so many organizations where like the leaders just expect everybody else to live it, but then they don't live it themselves. And guess what that's going to do? You're going to have a lot of upset, let's say, to use a lighter word, people that are just like, I work for a bunch of hypocrites, apparently, And so anyway, that's what I would say. What about you, Josh?
That's good. I would agree with you. I was laughing because your response was the same exact thing that I would have said, TJ, like words out of my own mouth. I think we may be the same person. I don't know. But I would agree. It starts at the top. It has to start at the top. If you have a terrible CEO or a terrible boss that is hypocritical or toxic, it's just impossible to have a healthy culture. Jocko Willink says, it's not about what you say or what you communicate, but it's about what you tolerate. And if from an executive level, not only are they tolerating certain toxic elements, but they're living them out themselves, then just 0% chance. Run from that organization as fast as you can. But then I think like as the trickle down effect goes, I do believe that once you have that healthy leader in place at the top, that everything rises and falls on team leaders. It is the job of the team leader to take the vision, the mission, the values that exist at an organizational level, the direction that everybody's rowing in, and connect that personally to each individual on the team. There's an equation that we use in one of our WildSpark lessons, and the equation is effort times attitude times skill times support leads to engagement. And so there's a lot of things in there. I know that was fast, but effort, attitude, skill, and support leads to engagement. But there's elements of that equation that different people are responsible for. So the individual contributor that's showing up to work every day, you are responsible for the effort and the attitude that you bring into the workplace every day. You can control that 100%. That is in your power to control. And your skill, you could invest in yourself. You could make choices and decisions to continue to grow yourself as a leader and as a person. But then the other two elements there, I would say the skill portion of that is a shared responsibility. The team leader should also be equally as invested in developing and honing the skills of their team as the individuals are. And support is all on those team leaders. If there is no support, then the culture will suffer because you have those expectations that are way up here, and people don't feel like the leader or the organization is doing its job to help them succeed to where those expectations are. And then there's just massive frustration that exists when it comes to building the culture on a day in and day out basis. So that was long-winded, but it's because everybody is involved. And so I wanted to cover all bases there, everything from the top to middle leaders to individual contributors that show up to work every day. I would agree with you, TJ, 100%. I think it falls on everybody's shoulders, maybe a little bit more heavy on some shoulders than others, but definitely everybody is responsible.
Absolutely, guys. I love what both of you shared. And, something that you mentioned, Swing, that, we really champion here at WildSpark is just that if you don't take those values that are infused into your culture and pass them down to your mid-level leaders and your frontline leaders, that's a huge miss, right? So that's why we at WildSpark are always championing, like, build your current bench, build your future bench, right? Because if you're infusing those values down to that level, then that's where you're going to see all the culture and all the values multiplied at every level of the organization, and everyone will feel ownership for it. So great stuff, guys. All right. So now we're going to kind of shift into some practical things that people can do, because we don't just want to talk about what culture is and why it's important. We want to leave you with some takeaways so that you can go and feel equipped and empowered to create a culture that people won't want to leave. So one of the biggest questions that we at WildSpark, we do an exercise with companies, and we partner with companies on something called the culture benchmark, where we actually are able to assess where they're at. But if people today on their own wanted to go and sort of gauge their current culture, what are some practical things you guys might suggest to them to be able to just have a jumping off point here?
I've got a very quick answer to this, TJ, and then I'll pass it to you to elaborate on. I I saw another statistic. I'm the statistics guy today. I feel like Ernie on the NBA show. EJ's Nito stat of the night. If any NBA fans are out there. So the statistic is only 20% of executives clearly understand their culture, which is shocking. That means 80% do not understand, have a clearly have clear insight into what their culture is. And I think the simple answer to this question, Rachel, you alluded to this through the culture benchmark that we will do with some organizations, is ask questions. It's just where you have to start. Questions are arguably, question asking is arguably the most important skill in leadership, the ability to ask questions and listen. And so could definitely get into more specifics on what types of questions you should be asking and how do you get responses to those questions and some of those things. But in its simplest form, I would just say you got to start by asking a lot of questions to your team. TJ, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. 100%. Questions are so important. And you had mentioned a statistic by Gallup earlier on employee engagement, and that comes from I think it's the Sweet 16 questions. You can go look those up. I'm not going to go over them and spend our time on that, but that's definitely one way, right? Is to do those types of surveys internally. But another caveat, I feel like, I used to do that at my old organization. We used to have the Sweet 16 questions, and that was asked us every one-on-one, essentially every month. Those 16 questions, and essentially like, how do we feel at work? It was trying to gauge the culture. And then, they're great, but then when you go and talk to your friends in the organization that are getting asked the same questions, you start to realize that maybe people aren't giving like their honest, truthful answer to those questions sometimes. And so that's unfortunate. And so I guess what I would say to that is you got to have boots on the ground, man. Like you have to have boots on the ground. And Josh alluded to this earlier, like, there are certain people that the responsibility of culture falls on a little more heavily. I like to call those the influencers in the organization. Some people just have a bigger influence, if you want to call it, than others. They have bigger social circles. They're just more extroverted. They're involved in so many different circles. Therefore, they hear that cooler talk that I talked about earlier. They get to hear those real, raw conversations that are happening. And so as a leader, I want to identify who are those influencers in my organization, create, and this is with everybody, right? You got to have trust with everybody, but with those people, like especially, you got to have some serious trust, because then you need to go and you need to ask them questions. Like Josh just said, real, raw questions. What's happening? Boots on the ground. What's the water cooler talk like? Like, I want to know what's really going on in the organization. And that's so important, because those surveys, I just feel like they're great. They'll get you a benchmark or a baseline, but you need to really know. And the only way to do that is to truly go and empathize with the people that you actually work with and understand how they feel on a daily basis. So I would say, like, from a practical standpoint, identify those influencers in your organization. Who really is driving the culture? Build some really good relationships with those people, so that you can go to them and have that trust where they'll tell you what the water cooler talk is actually like. But then to maintain that trust, you then have to do something about it. Not just hear it, not just hear the complaints. And those complaints, unfortunately, sometimes may be about you yourself and about decisions that you're making or ways that you're living or not living those core values. Make changes, like do something about it, so that people can see you really do mean it. When you say, let's live these core values and this is our mission, they need to see you making changes if needed to actually live those, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And my man, Josh Swing, he's always so good about this when we have our monthly webinar. So I'm going to go ahead here and share it with all of you. But if you personally, in your role, or maybe, in any previous roles that you've had, like, some good practical ways to gauge your current culture, we would love for you to share them in the chat so that other people can really get something out of that as well. So please feel free to drop that stuff into the chat so that we can hear from you. And then, based on what you've worked through and your experience, it can always be a blessing to others. So we'd love to hear from you on ways that you've been able to gauge your current culture. So from gauging the current culture to, okay, I kind of have an idea of where I'm at. I've identified my influencers. I've gotten some raw, honest feedback about them or about the culture from them. I've put on my thick skin, and humbled myself so that I can hear what I need to hear to change my culture and move us in the right direction. Okay, now, so what then are some practical ways that someone can improve their culture right now? And TJ, I'm initially just going to throw this one to you because I know Nectar has so many practical things that people can put into place for that.
Yeah, 100%. Like Josh, I tried to come a little bit prepared to this. So one of my all-time favorite books is a book called Influencer. You can go look it up afterward. It's phenomenal. It helps you to figure out how to influence change. And in here, there's this quote that I love that I think applies a lot to this. It says, "Reward small improvements in behavior along the way. Don't wait until people achieve phenomenal results. Instead, reward small improvements in behavior." And then it goes on to quote a study. "When polled, employees reveal that their number one complaint is that they aren't recognized for their notable performances. Apparently, people hand out praise as if it were being rationed, usually only for outstanding work. Make a small improvement, and it's highly unlikely that anyone will say or do anything. Each year, a new survey publishes the fact that employees would appreciate more praise. And each year, we apparently do nothing different." Reward small improvements along the way. I think no matter what, obviously Nectar, we provide a platform to actually do that, right? We provide a platform to actually, shout out those small improvements or those small things that people are doing every single day. No matter what platform you're using, or if you don't even have one, or Slack, Teams, whatever, shout people out. When you see them living your core values, shout it out. Let people know. Make sure that they know that you see that they are living those core values and that they're making an effort, even if it's just something small. Like we saw a shout out the other day here at Nectar. It was like, "Thank you so much for picking me up and driving me to work," or it's just, it can be whatever. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the workplace. That just has such an impact on people when they feel seen. They feel like the things that I'm doing to try to add value every single day, it's seen and it's appreciated by the people around me. And it's not just those end of the quarter, end of year, employee of the month, one person. It's like, no, make sure everybody feels seen and appreciated at your workplace. I would say that's a practical way to improve culture starting immediately. Make sure people feel valued and appreciated at work by rewarding those small improvements along the way.
So well said, TJ. And it fits so well with this question, and it specifically being right now, because you can go today and think about what is something that I could catch somebody doing right lately. Essentially, think about all the things that somebody else around you has done really well. And you could simply send them a text. Like, sure, it's awesome if your organization can invest in a platform like Nectar to make that super easy to affirm others and acknowledge them and appreciate them. But at a minimum, you could send a Slack message. You could send a text message and let them know that they're appreciated, because
a written note, literally, it could be simple.
Yeah. A handwritten note goes a really long way, actually, because they're so rare these days.
100%.
You just write something down on paper. But the one common denominator that all of us have that are on this webinar right now is we all feel the need to be seen, heard, and valued. All of us have that inherent desire within us. And so Craig Rochelle, who's an author, a pastor, a thought leader, says that you should celebrate somebody 5 times more than you think that you should, or 5 times more than you feel comfortable appreciating them, because then you'll know that they're getting the appreciation that they need to feel valued at work. And I love even Jessica and Karen coming through here and submitting some things. But yeah, I saw, and Jessica's coming to us from Chick-fil-A. I saw something from an owner of Chick-fil-A, Kayla Smith, who like ordered a bunch of blank appreciation cards off of Amazon that probably cost like $2 and would just like fill them in, and hand them out to people as she saw them living out the core values. And then I also know that like there's people on here who may not have the influence yet within your organization to implement something organization wide from a systems perspective. If you are in that position and you have the ability to do that, you should do it. But if you're not, the song by Michael Jackson comes to mind, Man in the Mirror. If you want to make the world a better place, then start with yourself and make the change. So just start doing it and watch how contagious it is. Other people will begin to pay it forward, and you'll really start this contagious spread of appreciation, which is a big part of what makes a positive culture. So TJ, just doubling down on everything that you just said.
100%. And real quick, if you don't mind, Rachel, Jessica is here from Chick-fil-A. I remember when I was diving deep into this in my other organization, into like what creates great culture and mission and values and all these things, right? And I remember Chick-fil-A was like a resounding just like example. I was like, they crush it. And I love their corporate purpose. And I just looked this up: to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us, and to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. My pleasure, man. Like, can we just talk about how like literally every single person that works at Chick-fil-A lives this every single day? Like, the culture of Chick-fil-A because they literally all live this every single day, and the small, simple things that, yeah, sometimes we get sick of them saying my pleasure, but we feel so good after being in Chick-fil-A. Come on. We all love it. And so Jessica, big shout out to you guys at Chick-fil-A, crushing it, living your mission and your core values. I absolutely love it. I had to give you a shout out.
Amen. Awesome. Shout out to the Trussville, Alabama Chick-fil-A, because they are always so good about coming around and filling up my drink and then like taking care of me. We love Chick-fil-A here at Wild Spark, so amen to that. So, guys, we have talked and hit on so many great things. I really kind of want to bring it home with this. We're talking about ways to gauge culture. We're talking ways to implement some quick wins and build great culture right now. What about sustaining culture for the long haul? Like, what do you think are some good tips or strategies or just ways to think about, or secrets to sustain your culture? Maybe there's somebody here. It's like, we've got a great culture, but I'm worried about as we scale, maybe when we go from 30 employees to 80 or 100 employees, how do I keep it? Like, maybe there are some people who are just thinking about that, right? So like, what are the secrets to sustaining it?
I'll go first here. I think we would all agree that culture leaks. If just because you have a great culture today, if you stop doing what you're doing, or if you refuse to continue to innovate and focus and put energy towards it, very quickly you will have a bad culture. You'll look up, 6 months down the road or a year down the road and be like, what happened? Be like, oh yeah, we stopped being intentional about the culture that we're creating. I had a leader named John Basie at the Impact 360 Institute share 3 R's with me that relate to this. You've got to give your team reasons, relationships, and rhythms if you want to continue to sustain your culture. And I'll break down each of those. We talked about all 3 of these already. The reasons, obviously, you have to know what your organization stands for. You have to know what direction, where's your destination that you're rowing in. And then relationships are the reason that people stick around. And how do you build relationships? You show appreciation towards others. You know what's happening in their life, but it's impossible to do that without a relationship in place. But rhythms are so critically important for both of the 2 previous R's. And so I just think about making sure that there are rhythms in your life. We become what we repeatedly do. And so it is not enough once a year to all get together as an organization and say, okay, we're going to do some shout outs and awards for the year. It's not enough. While that is great, and I would encourage you to bring the whole team together annually and do a big celebration, there has to be things happening weekly, monthly, quarterly. I'll give some quick examples. We do weekly stand-ups. here where we shout out other people on the team. It is 15 minutes, 30 minutes to sit around and just shout out other people that we've seen doing something exceptionally well. Monthly, we do leadership content together, and we talk about each other's personal growth and development, and we speak into that. We also do story lunches. Story and understanding people's stories is such a big part of initially building relationships with people. So any new hire that comes on board, we have a lunch reserved each month for them to sit down or Zoom in front of the entire team and tell them their story, the major life events that they've been through that have led them to where they are today. Quarterly, we do offsites. We do vision, mission, values offsites just to remind ourselves and recenter ourselves on where we're headed directionally. And then, like I said, annually we do get-togethers. But I think what's really important here is we live in a world today that prioritizes productivity. It's just everywhere. We live in a hustle culture. Let's cram as much in as we can to get as much done as we can over the course of any given day. And what a lot of people don't realize is you have to go slow to go fast. So there has to be times where you take a break to re-energize the team so that people can show up and bring their best self to work every day and be their best self in every other area of their life. So that would be my answer. My short answer to that question would just be rhythms. There has to be some structure and rhythms in place that make sure that this remains a focus. If not, it'll just very quickly fall by the wayside.
I love that, Josh. Super, super important. And I've loved all of the comments in here. Continually revisit and reinforce your company's mission, making sure you prioritize. Like prioritize seems to kind of be that word, right? Make sure that it stays front of mind, because we all know this. Culture is going to happen whether you like it or not. Culture is going to happen. It's always evolving. It's always happening. So what are you doing about it? Obviously, like I said in the beginning, you can't control exactly what the end result of your culture is. But I like to think of it like the difference between a master chess player who manipulates all of the pieces all of the time versus a gardener. The gardener creates an environment and makes sure it's constantly staying up on it and weeding out different things, right? Pulling the weeds, making sure there's no invasive things. The gardener's creating that environment for those plants to thrive. It's not necessarily manipulating every single thing all the time, but it's all the gardener always goes back to his or her garden and is always making sure that they're creating an environment that those plants can thrive in. Here at Nectar, we have this framework, these 6 pillars of what enables great culture ongoing. And if these are front of mind, you will continue and be able to sustain great culture. But it is a matter of prioritization. Like I think it was it Joanna who said that? Shauna, thank you for saying that, prioritizing that culture. I just want to go over those 6 pillars real quick. And it's literally called the CREATE framework. It's an acronym, the CREATE. And I love that we did the acronym CREATE because it implies that it's proactive. You are creating it. You're doing something about it. The C stands for connection, building community and camaraderie in the work environment. And somebody asked me, let's see here. Was it Rachel? No, Rachel, you've been commenting. Joanna, sorry. I keep thinking Joanna's at the bottom and then Rachel will put something. Joanna, what are the top 2 to 3 pieces of advice for employers with in-office, hybrid, and remote staff? Phenomenal question. Connection can happen with remote workers. Emily, who's been commenting, she works here at Nectar. HQ, we're here in Utah. She's out in Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. And we have another employee in Arkansas. We feel so connected to each other because we're constantly shouting each other out. We're constantly recognizing each other for great work that we're doing. We're always in Slack. We have fun, different like sub Slacks of like music or different sports or whatever you're into, right? But continually creating connection with your employees. The R is recognition. And I've talked about this one plenty. That's where it's kind of like reward those small behaviors, recognize when people are living those core values. The first E is empathy, truly caring for your people. That's that like creating those real relationships where you can have empathy and understand really what's going on, boots on the ground in your culture, in your organization. How do people genuinely feel? And do they know that you want to empathize with them and you want to do something about that and make sure that they feel seen and heard? The A is alignment, uniting around a shared purpose, that mission. Continually, like everything you do starts with that why. Why do we do it? We want to help people feel more valued and appreciated at work. That's here at Nectar. We start every single all hands with that. What's our purpose? Now, here are all the things that we're doing to try to achieve that mission. So we're all aligned on that. The T is trust, giving people autonomy and flexibility over their work. So, Joanna, being willing to trust people to have that hybrid work environment, being willing to trust them that if they've got kids that they need to go pick up at school, you trust them that they're going to get their work done. It's like those kinds of things, making sure that they feel trusted. And the last E, elevation, creating opportunities for growth and development of each team member. Everybody needs to feel like when they're adding value, that value is not only going to be recognized, but going to be rewarded by being able to have that elevation within the company, in the form of different titles or even just pay bumps, whatever that may be. There is I can see a path for myself to elevate and to grow. So that's our create framework here at Nectar. I absolutely love it. We talk about it all the time, and that's how we personally here at Nectar work to sustain our culture.
Love that. I love a good acronym, and that's a really powerful one. So thank you for sharing that, TJ. Well, guys, it has been so great getting to chat with all of you out there who are listening and have tuned in today, but also to just glean so much from Josh Swing and TJ, and just two guys who really have a heart for culture and who are living out everything that they've shared today. So thank you so much for your time. Swing, I'd love to kind of throw it to you just to talk through maybe some of those elements we've talked about at the top level when it comes to culture, but then infusing those values into your people. Love for you to talk through what's available in WildSpark in order to do this.
Yeah, for sure. I love how TJ rounded out the CREATE acronym with ELEVATE being the last one in the acronym with the E. The elevation that WildSpark focuses on within organizations is elevating leadership capacity and growth. You mentioned a couple of examples there, TJ, that would fall under elevate. What everybody is looking for is to know that they are growing in their role, helping things grow. And so if you want people in your organization to grow and you want a rhythm for doing that, WildSpark is a great solution. Just like anything else that we've mentioned, you could manually do that. But if you want life to be a lot easier for you, use WildSpark for it. Just like if you want life to be a lot easier for how you recognize and appreciate your employees, use Nectar. Like it just makes sense to invest in the things that are most important for your organization. If you're experiencing this webinar and you're like, this is amazing, but how do I get the rest of my team to buy into it? Like, how do I get the rest of my team to buy into culture, to go all in on these things? A great solution would be plug them into WildSpark, let them experience some content around how important culture is, and let that tee you up to be able to have a conversation with them versus just walking in cold. These are two examples of what that content could look like. Your team could be focusing on cultivating culture together. Your team could be focusing on what does it look like to build an extraordinary, exceptional team and the pillars to doing that. So I won't talk anymore about WildSpark because I love it. I'm slightly biased, but TJ, I wanted to make sure that the audience knew too, like, you're my spirit animal, dude, if I had to pick a spirit animal. And so I'm sure everybody else is probably relating to you in that same way that's listening. How can anybody connect with TJ that wants to connect with TJ?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously nectarhr.com, but obviously feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I would absolutely love to connect with you. DM, like, honestly, I am absolutely open. If you have questions, follow-up questions to this, 100%. would love to DM with you. Would love to even schedule a call to go over this. Like this is literally my passion. I think about this all the time. Like I said, this is my drive time, my shower time. Like I'm continually thinking about how to improve culture and what makes great culture. So would love to learn from you. Like I hate being like, not hate, but it's almost like I don't want to feel like I'm just preaching to you guys. Like I genuinely want to learn from you. So I've appreciated your comments. So if you do want to like connect, like I would love to hear your ideas on how to create great culture and get all the ideas. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
It's good stuff, guys. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being here today. I also want to let everybody know that we're going to pick up this conversation on culture next month. We had some questions that we answered, but we're going to, in June, talk about taking this to the next step and what are culture killers? What are the things that you really need to zero in on and nip in the bud? Or what are the things that maybe are pervasive in your culture right now and you need some strategies to turn those around? We're going to lean into that topic and talk with you about that. This is one of like the centerpieces of our Cultivating Culture unit in WildSpark, and we're going to bring it to you. So there should be a QR code there. I'm not sure why it's not popping up, but what you can do is go to WildSpark's LinkedIn page. If you don't already like it, and then we'll make sure that we're posting about it all month long, and you'll be able to jump on that one in June. It'll be the second Wednesday in June, so you don't want to miss it. And if any of you need to get in touch with the team here, you can reach out to TJ on LinkedIn, find Nectar on LinkedIn or nectarhr.com. And then if you would like to chat with our team captain, Josh Swing, or talk to WildSpark about how we can build a people development strategy where you can really engage and elevate your team and your people and your culture, reach out to us, wildspark.com. You can scan that QR code there and we would be happy to chat with you. So thank you so much for joining us today. Any last words, guys, that you want to share with everybody?
Okay. Lorraine, Alicia, Deborah, thank you for the love on the WildSpark side of things. Most importantly, TJ, thank you 1,000 times for coming on and spending some time with the WildSpark team and investing in our audience here today. It's fun to get to be around people who just love it and live it and breathe it. Like you said, it occupies all of your headspace. That's totally evident. So appreciative that there are people in the world like TJ that are out there making an impact and fighting the fight when it comes to just caring for people at the highest level. So thanks a ton, man.
100%. And thank you everybody in the chat. You guys have been so engaged and so phenomenal. Like that makes it seriously so fun when you feel like you're not just talking to a brick wall or just a computer. Like I can actually see people engaging. Like, thank you so much everybody for engaging in the chat. It's been incredible being on here. Appreciate WildSpark for having me on. You guys are awesome. I'll definitely stay in contact with you guys because, like you said, Josh, I am 100%. You are my spirit animal as well. So
yes.
And you are officially my new team captain. So
love that. Awesome. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Wednesday, great rest of your week. We hope to see you soon. Thank you so much for spending your lunch or your time with us today. We love you. Bye.
Go build some culture.